Right. A very good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good day.
Good afternoon.
Right.
Good day.
Thank you very much that we could join this session. I think we will start with introductions. I'm Johnny Chabalala. I'm from South Africa. I'm sitting in Pretoria, currently with a company called Bruiser Tech. Short history about me. I served in the military for a number of years. I continue to serve as a reservist. And I served also in a company called Saab Avitronics, part of Saab Green Tech Defense, and later went on and joined Genel, and I just left the employment of Genel to be with Bruiser Tech. In short, that is my history. If we can maybe introduce ourselves in no particular order. Captain, we can start with you, Captain Tully.
Hey, hello. My name is Captain John Tully. I'm a U.S. Navy Foreign Area Officer, currently assigned at the headquarters of U.S. Naval Forces Africa and U.S. 6th Fleet in Naples, Italy. My background is that I've spent about the last 14 or 15 years working on African security issues in a variety of locations here, Naples at the Africa Command headquarters and at a variety of embassies, and for a while with the Economic Community of West African States. Most of my background, but not all, is dealing with maritime security issues, maritime security operations, and U.S. security assistance programs and security cooperation programs in Africa. It's great to be here and an honor to be here on the panel. And thank you all for the invitation for taking part today.
Thank you very much. And if I may request, Singh, is it Singh?
Yes.
What is your rank, sir?
Hello, Colonel Sangul from Turkish Army. I'm working in Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers Europe Logistics Division. It's my second month here. Previously, I deployed 3 times for international missions, 1 time for Afghanistan, 2 times of Kosovo. And thank you for this great opportunity. I'm glad to be here with you guys. Over.
Thank you very much. My fellow South African, Mr. Hubert.
Yes, thank you, Johnny. My name is Koos Hubert. I have a mechanical engineering background. I work for a company, DCD, Protected Mobility, and we are armored vehicle manufacturers in South Africa. And we produce a range of Springbok armored personnel carrier vehicles, as well as the world-renowned Husky mine detection vehicle, which is used by many NATO countries and some countries in Africa. Combat engineers use our products in route clearance operations to clear roads or routes by detecting and neutralizing landmines and IEDs. And our vehicles lead logistic convoys, which are military or civilian, to deliver the required logistics for continued operations. Other military and police forces also use our products for specific roles in border and internal operations. Our products operate very successfully in African countries and in AU and UN missions. And we understand the need for logistic support to ensure the customer has a high level of equipment availability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris. Can we go to the States in New York?
Hi, my name is Edward Mek. I'm from Zimbabwe. I work in the United Nations Procurement Division, and I'm the team leader for the freight forwarding team. Basically, what we do, we are responsible for the arranging the logistics and the transportation for peacekeeping operation requirements. We arrange the transportation for the troop equipment, the equipment for the troops into the peacekeeping operations, and also we arrange for the air freight, the air transportation of the troops themselves. So we're basically involved in buying those services. I've been with the UN Common System for about 20 years. I used to work for the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna doing procurement. And before that, I was also into procurement for Anglo-American Corporation. And now I'm here, and this is what I'm doing for the past 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that I left out? Please, if you can indicate if there's anyone else.
No.
Great. Okay. That settles it. It means it's only the five of us in this discussion. And looking and listening at the experiences, as you mentioned, I think we will have a great time talking about the issues affecting supporting missions everywhere in the world, the logistics. And I'm excited that you guys have a lot of experience in that field. And just to add a bit on the side where the company that I also represent plays in the space, they manufacture vehicle called Bruiser. Initially, they manufactured the 112, and now recently manufactured the Bruiser 212. And the 212, there is collaboration to date with a Polish company called WB Group, where we built the vehicle in South Africa, and then the Polish guys added a turret on the vehicle with a weapon, and they also added a weapon loitering system. So the whole combination is codenamed now Combat Mate. Now, back to the subject that we have to address today. That is what are the challenges that face a whole lot of countries when they deploy everywhere in the world, be it in Africa, anywhere, literally. And I would like to ask any of you, we can at any time come in to answer questions. And the questions, for an example, and I think Mr. Hubert will be best suited in this field, is how would you simplify logistics when purchasing equipment?
Thanks, Johnny. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say, to win a war, you must have a sustainable backup or logistic support. If you cannot sustain your logistic support, don't go to war, because you are definitely going to lose the battle. So to me, any mission is almost like a project. Any new mission that is realized by the AU or the UN probably has a budget, it has a start date, and it has an end date. Now, we normally know that all these missions overrun their time and their budgets, which is not good for the guys paying the fees. But the way I see it, and I'm talking from a vehicle perspective very much, because our vehicles operate all over Africa and in these missions, I believe the manual that the infantry battalion describes of the UN, it's a complete list of equipment, is a very good manual. But coupled to the equipment, you must be able to support that list of equipment in any mission. So from a vehicle perspective, I would ensure that most of the equipment is bought from the same brand manufacturer, for instance, because it makes the supply of spares and the maintenance of vehicles so much easier. Operators and mechanics, if they can work on the same brand, it'll make the operation in any mission so much easier. Furthermore, I would wish that the UN allow the OEMs to be more available in mission areas to help the TCCs maintain their vehicles or their products, to ensure a high rate of availability for reimbursement funding. We know how much funding is lost by TCC companies or countries because they do not reach the 85% inspection rate. So I would start off to say that is the way I would simplify logistics from a vehicle perspective.
Thank you very much, Koos. I think I really agree with your observations and your proposals in terms of what needs to be done by the UN in allowing other, countries or troop contributing countries to also be on the field so that they can have proper support of those vehicles on the ground for the benefits that you've already mentioned. Thank you very much for that input. I would like to move on and put another question, but before I do that, if anyone of the panel here would like to comment or add something on what Mr. Hubert has explained, please be my guest.
Yeah, I think I would like to add something onto that, and it goes to how decisions are made for procurements. It's a philosophy that we have operated with in the United States when we provide security assistance in the form of equipment to partners and allies. And that's something we call the total package concept, because purchasing an equipment, a piece of equipment like a vehicle or a ship or a patrol boat is really only part of what needs to be purchased. There's a lot more that goes along with that than just the end item. So you've got the boat, but we always, when we develop these sales proposals and sales events that we do, we try to make sure that we're covering more than just that. There's the training ahead of delivery for the operators. There's the training ahead of delivery for the maintainers. And then there is assistance in how that new piece of equipment is going to be integrated in with the existing equipment that the military already has. And then perhaps equally important is the follow-on support. So how many spares and repair parts are going to be provided alongside of that. We find sometimes that our partners are enticed with a low cost at the outset for the end use item without necessarily taking into account the total package, the spare parts, the training, and everything that goes along with it, so that boat, that ship, that patrol vessel or vehicle is going to be able to be useful, hopefully for years to come.
Thank you very much. Edward, I would like to put one across to you, and that is, what are the general logistics challenges the UN Secretariat encounters in delivering its equipment for its own operations?
The UN generally, we encounter almost very similar problems with any other organization involved in logistics. But we do have some kind of unique situations that we encounter simply because of the areas that we operate in. Some of the places, this is mostly the peacekeeping operations. Now, the infrastructure is not so developed. So we have these issues with poor roads, bridges, communication networks. And so you find that sometimes during the rainy seasons, there is a delay in transportation of our requirements. At the same time, you find that there's a shortage of equipment in those areas. Material handling equipment. You find that you don't find sufficient cranes. Sometimes you don't have cranes that can handle, say, a 40-foot container. So many issues. You find that some airports have runway restrictions that they cannot take the bigger aircraft. Say when we're transporting helicopters, you can't bring in one of those huge aircraft, say the AN-124, you can't land it there. So it becomes a problem. It increases cost to the UN. And in some countries, we have problems where there's only one flight per week into that particular country. And it becomes a problem in instances where we need to ship, agent supplies, say cold chain, or stuff involved with the COVID. So that becomes a problem. We also lack, those places also lack facilities like refrigeration, cold chain requirements. So these are the kind of problems that we have. You also find that there are local issues where sometimes you find locals delaying the transportation of cargo because they want passengers, which is not allowed. And there's the usual attacks and security concerns. So these are the kind of things that we encounter. Sometimes the rules change as trucks or our cargo is moving, and rules change from border to border in the different transit countries. So that becomes a logistics nightmare. The cargo has to be stored, truck detention, additional storage charges. So these are the issues that we encounter, from the UN perspective, especially when we move cargo of a military nature, which I would say is the core on the logistics side that we're doing.
Very much. I think it is fair to say that many of these challenges are not necessarily new, but they depend on a number of variables for them to be sorted out. And they would take time, and they would take and require a certain level of preparedness by particular countries for them to be able to can put systems in place so that these types of challenges can be addressed. Anyone that would like to add a 30 seconds comment on what Edward has put across?
I totally agree Edward's remarks. Nowadays, starting from 2017, NATO has enablement projects in order to enable the operation area for the repairing the infrastructure for the authorities and legislations, some inputs, and promote allies to prepare the area of operations smooth for the force flow management. So throughout I think to all of the world dealing with the infrastructure problems, so we need to adjust for the military size infrastructure, I think.
Thank you very much. Any other comments before I put out another question? That silence would propose I need to move on. Gentlemen, can African countries use the model of the standby force in logistical support as a template? Anyone can go for it. Maybe we can give Captain Tuli also to lead on this one if he's ready.
I'd like to have a moment to think about that if I could.
My apologies. I just wanted to attack a captain. Don't worry.
No problem.
Kwasi-Bert, in your experience, as you think about it, I would like to also put this across. I think a number of vehicle manufacturers like ourselves, we went and we tried to come up and manufacture a vehicle that is easy to support, and we bring these vehicles out that they can be used in environments where they can be too computerized, but we also build some of these vehicles so that they can be easy, they can be fixed in the field, especially if you're going to deploy this type of vehicles in places like the DRC, as Edward alluded to, the logistic support and the roads and infrastructure. So you also need a vehicle that will also be, can be fixed on the side of the road next to a tree. It is easy to train the crews to be able to change spares on that vehicle. Having said that, I think you guys have now had a bit of time to think about that question. If anyone is ready to tackle it, please talk to me. Of course, you can go.
I think let's give Captain Tuli first an opportunity.
Captain, you ready?
Thank you. I will say a couple of things about the idea of standby forces for logistics. I think the concept of the standby force is a very attractive one because it provides a degree of flexibility and it provides a degree of on-call response capability. The challenge with standby forces always becomes the details of how they are going to work and how they are going to be implemented. Having a standby force, if it's a regional or NATO has standby force concepts, the African Union has standby force concepts. The regional mechanism that oversees that type of a structure how that is put into place, what sort of political and diplomatic support there is behind it, and then the details of how that's going to be managed are very important. Otherwise, you can end up with a standby capacity on paper that doesn't necessarily exist to the degree of readiness that is required to be truly effective. One of the things that's been talked about a little here are the challenges of logistics in some austere environments. It becomes even more challenging when the equipment and capacity to deal with logistics in those environments is typically in pretty high demand. Having that put on standby, to really be on standby, implies that it is not being used for something else. So there's some capacity challenges, and there's some details about who can activate that standby capability that I think need to be overcome. But it is a good concept to respond to crises as they develop, especially when you don't have a set threat or a set crisis that you know is going to happen in time or space.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ibra?
Well, yes, I agree. I don't know how many countries can afford a standby force. The standby force by itself, must remain in training. It must be available whenever it has to be deployed. But in principle, I agree with that. Whether it fits within the UN mission or the AU mission, and whether it's mandated, that is something else. Sometimes paperwork takes much longer than deployments. But in principle, I agree.
Right. Thank you very much. Edward, I'd like to later on just bring you in as I put in another question, and that is, how can African countries avoid dependency on the first world, especially for mobilization and logistical support? If you have a thought on that, please share. And and I would like the other colleagues also to, based on their experiences where they have deployed in the past and have seen the delays, if any, that were there, so that how did troop contributing countries from Africa arrive, and how can we make sure that they can stand on their own and not be dependent on other nations for them to can do things and be on time?
Unfortunately, Johnny, I'm not an expert in those in that area. I wouldn't be able to give you, I'm not qualified really to comment on that.
My colonels that have deployed, Colonel in Turkey, I think you've done a couple of missions. If you allow me to put you on the spot, think about it, and you can respond as soon as you're ready. I think one of the problems, as you colleagues are thinking about it, that I've also picked up, is the thinking and the mentality that is held within some of these countries that would contribute to various missions. And one of the problems has always been that they deployed in the past, but they could not get their reimbursement due to problems that Koos has explained. And that then impacts on their next deployment, because by then they have already committed and promised that they will have forces. And I think that will affect them somehow. The question that remains in my question is going to be, do you have an opinion on how we can take away this sort of dependency, so that when they approach the UN or the AU and they want to commit forces, they must already know the requirements from the very onset and be self-sustainable? Any take on that one?
Yeah, I would like to respond. I think when you select equipment or procure equipment for any African mission, it should be very simple, very non-electronic, very basic for the skills levels that we have in Africa. And that doesn't mean that we are inferior. It means that you must have, for instance, a Euro 3 engine instead of a Euro 6 engine in terms of emission control. That is a very simple thing, because in Africa we have dirty diesel. So let's live with the problem, but let's get the right equipment to operate in those environments. Just to go back to what Captain Tuli said, deliver the full package. I think in Africa, we can support the equipment we deliver. There's no doubt about that. We don't have to be dependent on first world countries, but we must deliver the full package. So you do your training, you do your technical publications, you do your spare supply, and you must know how long that mission is going to operate so that you as an OEM is prepared to support that TCC with the products he operates. And then I also realized that these missions also change their troops every 6 months. That means every 6 months we have to retrain the operators and the mechanics and the people doing the planning for spares. So the OEM must stay involved in this process. Otherwise, the mission and the availability of the equipment will fail.
Thank you very much. I think it goes back to what you said when you started. It is important to understand first logistics. It is important to understand what will it take to get everything that you need out there so that you can be able to support the mission. Right. The next question, if you guys are ready, is how has the current shortage of containers and vessels availability affected UN logistics operations?
Well, our operations have been affected severely, I would say. There's a shortage of ships, ship charter. We use ship charter to move contingent owned equipment. And right now there's a big shortage on the market. So what tends to happen is that cargo tends to, the freight forwarders or the contractors will move the cargo to the port, but the vessels are lost. Once it's lost, then it means that the cargo, the contingent owned equipment stays at the port. And currently, this is the problem that we are encountering. We cannot get any vessels. At the same time, the prices continue to change. For moving anything, we can't get containers. Even for our regular UN-owned equipment shipments, the equipment that we're buying from our suppliers into the peacekeeping operations, it's not been easy at times to get space to get booked onto these liner services and to move the cargo into the peacekeeping operation. It's been very difficult. And sometimes you find that the cargo gets bumped off. Once you secure space, then they bump it off. So it's really a big a problem right now for us.
Thank you very much. I think with the current pandemic and restrictions and the challenges faced by the world, it looks like, Mr. Edward, this problem is going to be there for a while, and brace yourself for impact.
Exactly. And sorry, and I'm saying the ports are congested. So it's in some ports in areas that we operate in have actually been closed. So it's really a problem to move cargo into and out of those places.
And I think again with demand against less capability, prices will continuously soar, and they will affect missions, that will affect a lot of planning and budgets in many countries, especially your organization as well.
Yes.
I would like to put another question, and that is NATO support to AU logistics domain and discussion about military logistic principles, process, and definitions. Mr. Sangul, what is your kernel, right?
Yeah.
Kernel, let me abuse you on this one.
Okay, NATO support to African Union dates back to 2005, when Union requests logistics support to expand its mission to Darfur, I mean. Relation based on request demand basis, Union request airlift, strategic lift demands, and NATO provides this support. From 2005 and between 2005 and 2008, NATO provided airlift to more than 30,000 troops to deploy Sudan. In 2007, North Atlantic Council agreed in principle to provide support to Union in Somalia operations, and this support extends until January 2022. NATO support mainly is on two bases: one, subject matter expert, and the structural assistance. Subject matter expert, NATO has a liaison office in Addis Ababa, and there are some troops from 4 nations: France, Italy, Netherlands, and Turkey. Again, I say on demand basis, African Union demand some subject matter experts on that, and NATO provides, especially from Joint Force Command Naples, and goes on despite the COVID measures. 2020, NATO and Union expand this agreement and open since I think 2015, open all the schools to African students, African Union students. And that's all from my part for the NATO support African Union.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think it also helps us that you as experienced officers that have seen all these issues, you provide a platform for lessons learned so that other countries who are going into deployments can plan better. I just don't know of a platform where all of this is shared broadly, but I think it will be conferences like this and seminars that we can share this type of information. Thank you very much for sharing, Colonel. My friend in New York, who is naturally 18 hours flight away from us here, yet originally is only 2 hours away. I've got another one for you, which has to do with security.
Right.
How does the UN factor security in its procurement process for logistic services?
Okay. So what we try and do is during the bidding process, because all these requirements, we go out to the market to bid. And in our bidding requirements, we normally have 3 legs, right? With the pre-carriage, on-carriage, which is normally the sea portion, and the on-carriage, which is, the sea portion, and the on-carriage, which is the transportation from the port into the mission. So what we do is we factor in clauses that have to be adhered to ensure the security of the COE. Like when we charter vessels, first to start with the vessel itself, it has to be direct sailing. We state direct sailing, no transshipment. And we have to limit the number of port calls because this is military equipment. We don't want to expose the equipment to different ports or to theft in case the equipment ends up being stolen or being arrested or being in the wrong hands. So that is actually included. And also we have requirements that whoever wins the bid, stated already in the bidding documents, has to inform the UN on a 24-hourly basis as and when the vessel is moving, so that we need to understand its location. If there's any delay for any reason, we have to be informed. So that is built into our bidding documents. And at the same time, we have to ask companies to adhere to several international conventions. They have to confirm that they have to, in terms of safety regulations with respect to ocean movement of ammunition and weapons, all that has to be adhered to. So, and also we say, once our cargo is being moved on a part cargo basis, it has to be on a last in, first out basis, which is a FIFO basis. So we already built in those mechanisms to make sure that there's security. Then we also have the issues of where we explain the issues of like a convoy. We ask our bidders to explain in detail how they're going to handle the transportation of the cargo, especially on the on-carriage, in the dangerous, especially in the theater. So we need detailed information about how they're going to do it. And in some missions, we actually specify specific type of vehicles, trailers that have to be used, because only specific types are operable in certain places, like in Mali, certain areas of Mali, because of, I think, of attacks and because of the, the kind of roads that are there. And yeah, so that's basically the key things that we include.
Thank you very much. In terms of supporting the security concerns on your side, do you ever want companies, countries to provide tracking capability of their equipment whilst it's en route to a mission area?
Tracking in certain countries, I think it will be Cameroon, where they have GPS, which is sort of mandatory as you come from Douala, if I'm not mistaken. So certain countries insist on that and ease on the tracking part of it. But that is actually something that we are looking, on a broader sort of picture, as new technologies and new ways, to track and trace our equipment. That's something that we're actually considering.
I think we also need in our discussions in the future to also add training and simulation capabilities so that we can build various scenarios so that we train and plan for them, so that should they happen, already we know what types of measures we can do. So at least so that we provide some form of decision support. Thank you very much, sir. Another question, how would you simplify logistics when purchasing equipment? And in that question, I add that what role do you think the original equipment manufacturers must play in supporting missions or providing mission support? Koos, if you are ready, I would be happy if you take a lead on this one, please.
Okay, I think interoperability is a very critical point of equipment in a mission. You may have different troop contributing countries going to a mission, and a lot of the stuff may not be interoperable. So that is, to me, very, very important. As I said earlier, some TCCs shuffle their troops every 6 months. And we must ensure that they have proper facilities, for instance, workshops and spares supply stores for them to equip and to work under those proper conditions. Yep, I would stop there just for the moment.
Thank you very much. I think considering that countries still have a decision on when to rotate the troops, what type of support they like to do, whether it should be UN support on the other side or the countries would support from their own bases at home. I think that puts another dynamic, which would mean that each and every country support system will be slightly different, only because of the type of support that they choose for their own forces. Any other comment on this question before I move on to the next one? Anyone, if you have a comment, please, let's go for it. We have already spoken about how we think we can actually simplify some of these issues. And Edward, on the other side, representing the UN, has also provided background in terms of security on the equipment, how they were affected by the shortages of vessels and things like that, soaring prices as a result. Gentlemen, allow me to ask this one question, if you can give me a moment. Is there a way that, given the infrastructure challenges, how can African countries improve their logistics and logistical military capability in the light of the lack of infrastructure in most cases? This is the issue that we touched on, at least two of the speakers, but I would like to have a few last comments from you and guidance in terms of what you think would be the solution to this problem. And to make it simpler for you, I don't only want solutions, but I also would like to know how badly it affects your missions in operations. Any take on this one?
I'll answer just a little bit here if you'd like. And it's mostly related, I think, to the question that you asked, which is, I think one of the most important things is to have a very good understanding. I think about this from an operations at sea perspective, which is perhaps a little bit different than a peacekeeping operations perspective. But knowing what the capabilities and capacities for logistics support in various ports is very, very important. But equally important to that is understanding what the capacities and capabilities of the various vendors that are in that port or in neighboring ports are. So this idea of getting people onto the ground ahead of time to assess the conditions, to assess the availability of various bits of logistics support is very, very important. Equally so, understanding what industry is able to provide and what various vendors have available in various places is there. In an operational perspective, sometimes we don't get to provide the amount of advanced warning that perhaps vendors might like to be able to meet our logistic requirements in ports. So knowing ahead of time what's possible, what's feasible, and what is going to be very hard is difficult. That's more of an assessment of the challenges perhaps than a prescription to fix the problem. But just from a maritime perspective, that's what we have been seeing as we're operating in and around the coast of Africa.
Thank you very much for that input. As I said earlier on, that one of the challenges or platforms that we may need should be a platform where we can share lessons learned. Because given the amount that many countries have been contributing troops for various missions, I think we should already have been in a position that some of the things that could be changed in planning, we should have already been able to can discuss, share lessons learned, so that those that are going next time do not repeat the mistakes of the previous deployment. I'm not sure if anyone wants to comment on that. If not, we will try and summarize because I think we had a good discussion, and I think this is very eye-opening. It makes us think harder. The pandemic affects us in that we don't have big forums anymore where all role players can be in one roof and we can be able to discuss these issues on a platform where we see one another. We can discuss these things over tea and dinner, and we can have direct interactions, because this new normal, we unfortunately don't get there. And it really affects our creativity as well. We are beings of contact. We love contact and things like that. However, I think we're doing our best given the current circumstances and challenges facing us. A whole lot of countries are really succeeding. We're seeing immunizations are going on, and people are getting sorted, and we're seeing the numbers in many parts of the world are not as high as we had in the past. Now, I would like to allow each and everyone a minute and a half or 2 minutes to can provide maybe a closing remark on the issues that we have discussed until now, and probably also put out a statement to say this should potentially be something, a way forward that should be considered by a number of countries. And also do not be shy to share what your own armed forces and what your own company with maybe an OEM of systems are doing to make sure we can get to a particular capability. Mr. Single, if I can start with you, if you have a comment and a closing remark and lessons to share, please say the stage is yours. You're still muted.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. It was a very good question. For the last words, in logistics, capabilities and infrastructure is very important pillars. But from my perspective, based on my experience, personal training, logisticians training are far more important than anything, because as mentioned before, if you don't have capability, but you have the human factor, human can create anything if he wants, okay, he or she wants. So for the interoperability at the same time, we should train our logistics personnel effectively, and this rotation mentioned before by Kuz, it was a very good point. We should train the people and stay on the line, so we can do anything in logistics mean. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Edward, your last comments?
Yes. So I think from our perspective is from the procurement of logistics services perspective, what is important is whom we contract. We would expect our contractors to have intimate local knowledge, really to understand the culture, really to understand the dynamics of a particular area, the seasons, when roads are passable, to understand the political situation, security situation at the time when the movement is happening. This would actually lessen some of the challenges that we encounter. This is not a job for a company that is experimenting or first timers. This has to be someone who knows. And also from our own perspective, internally, it can be solved by proper planning when movements are conducted, providing sufficient information to the vendors, and also between us and the vendors. I think it's Captain Tolo mentioned, to have intimate knowledge of the different portions of the legs of the journey, know the different ports, know the restrictions, know the requirements. Yeah, I would say that's what's important for us.
Thank you very much. I think one comment after Colonel Sungul and yourself, Edward, is that it is important, and you stressed well, and maybe not even, you stressed enough the fact that planning for logistics is important. And as Kurs said when he opened, if you don't plan for logistics, you're going to fail, because it is the logistics that will carry you through. It is the logistics that will determine your time of delivery and arrival to the mission area. It is the logistics that will make sure that your equipment arrives on time when you need it to can do certain things. And you mentioned knowing cultures and seasons and so forth. A continent like Africa is a very complex continent, and it is important to know when you're moving equipment across a couple of countries, there could be issues of conflict at the time that you're pushing equipment through through that country. There could be strained relations between that country which you're pushing equipment through with the country where you're going to deliver equipment, and that will affect the timely delivery of your equipment. And Colonel, you speak of interoperability. Interoperability, unfortunately, in many parts of the world, especially in our world, in our continent, is not something that is thought of from the design phase, from the procurement phase, and from the intent to go and deploy. Because you will even see that even one country would go with so many systems that will put a very difficult and strenuous logistic chain for that particular force to be able to support its forces on the other side. I'd like to give Captain Tully an opportunity to get his 2 minutes closing remark and guidance.
Johnny, thank you very much. And I do want to highlight just a couple of things, and a couple of them have been mentioned already, but I think they're worth mentioning again. One is that we need to plan and operate within the constraints as they exist, not within the situation we wish existed. And that relies on, requires us to rely on the existing infrastructure that's there. And this gets to Edward's point, which is the critical importance of having good local knowledge and good local contacts and partners who can help you get that level of information and that degree of fidelity that you need in order to be able to operate. One of the things that we've always trying to do here is work in partnership with the local navies, the local coast guards, and the local governments, because they are the ones that really have that high fidelity, highly specific knowledge of the logistics systems into which we are looking to move and looking to plug into. The second is Johnny, and you mentioned this, which was planning, and how we have to make sure that we're planning for the logistics and planning for the sustainability of what we're trying to do. I would say that we need to take that one step further, is we need to plan for it, and then we need to exercise it. Because if we're not exercising it, then we don't know if the plan is really effective. And I know sometimes that's not always a possibility when you're talking about UN peacekeeping missions and that, but that is certainly something that we try to do very frequently. We have 3 major exercises every year around the African continent to test those assumptions. And logistics is always a major part of that operation, just because there are so many different situations and different capabilities as we move around. So I'll just say thank you again for what I think was a really good panel and a good job of moderating. So I appreciate your efforts, and to everyone else on the panel today, thank you.
Captain, thank you so much. If I can comment again on what you also mentioned, the biggest problem, unfortunately for you and me, is that infrastructure in many countries is not our problem, yet it is a problem to me and you, because we have to push through equipment, yet we don't have control of when and how that infrastructure should be sorted out. And it is important, I think, as you mentioned, that let us war game this situation. Let us rehearse it. Let us train and simulate so that we've got various scenarios so that we can work out, should we be late? How long are we likely to be late when the season changes, when there are heavy rains in the east of the DRC and things like that? And thank you very much, Captain, for that input. Kos, please. You have the honor to have the last comment, and you probably have calculated that I said 2 minutes, and then if they did less than 2 minutes, it means you've got more time. If they did more than 2 minutes, it means you have less time. Go on, you carry on, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for the nice discussion. As they say, to keep one man at the sharp end, one soldier, you need very good logisticians, 3, 4, or 5 of them at the blunt end. That is always so, whether it's a UN mission or whether it's a war. That is critical. But I think the OEMs can play a major role with better communication with the troop contributing countries. We can communicate by WhatsApp, we can communicate by email, we can communicate by Zoom meetings or whatever. It makes it easier as long as you can communicate. So we must stay in touch with one another. As long as we open that line of communication and we have a relationship with our member states operating in missions, the various OEMs, can contribute tremendously by easing the logistics strain to keep equipment available. I would like to end off by saying that, and thank you to my colleagues on the panel. It was very nice meeting you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kos. I think, again, from my side, commenting on what you said, OEMs remain an important player in this game because OEMs need to design systems that will be practical and workable for soldiers on the ground. So we need to be able to design something that will work, something that will be easy to support, and something that is transportable using current military transport system that our forces have out there. That is why from our side, when we design vehicles, we make sure that that vehicle really needs to be able to fit in a specific container which can be put anywhere. And I think, Koos, from your side as well, you designed vehicles that can be flown and can be shipped almost on any platform and can be sent anywhere in the world, with the bulk of them being battle proven and have been in service in many parts of the world. You also mentioned an important thing where you're saying that communication is important. Gentlemen, I met you here, and trust me, I'm going to abuse you. Koos has mentioned that there are many platforms of communication. It is important that we as OEMs and players in the space can also have directions and inputs from your side, so that we are able to can manage our manufacturing, influence the designing, so that the vehicle is actually a vehicle that works. The thing is, with engineers, if you don't tell them how you want it, they are going to continue developing, yet it does nothing for you as a user on the other side. So, gentlemen, I appreciate that we could have this discussion, and I'm happy that we can close this discussion and invite Noor and the colleague back, so that they can take over, and then we can conclude this session.